Hi, this is Laura Tackett with Skills U, and today I want to talk to you about bias and propaganda. So before we talk about bias, let's talk about the author's point of view or their perspective. So every author and every person in the world has beliefs and opinions about issues. Right? Everyone has a point of view. There's nothing wrong with that. The way we see things is shaped by lots of different things, where we're born, when we're born, the people around us, our life experiences, right? All those things kind of shape how we see the world and different issues. And again, that's not a bad thing, right? Everybody has beliefs and opinions just by being a human being. Okay, so what is bias? So bias happens when you have an author who has an opinion. It kind of prevents that author from being kind of fair to like both sides. So for example, maybe I'm asked to write an article about the pros and cons of online learning. And my fourth grader has had a horrible time trying to do online learning during COVID. We have a bad internet connection. I've really kind of struggled to get them to get on there and do anything. And because I have had this bad experience, then I may have a really hard time being fair and presenting the pros and cons of online learning equally. That may be very tough for me because of my personal experience with it. And an author may or may not realize they are biased. They may think they're being fair and they're not, or they may very well know that they are not being fair. So bias happens anytime the author's opinion or their belief prevents them from being fair to both sides of the argument. So how do we recognize bias? It can be tough, but here are some kind of things to look for. Does the author selectively present the facts? Maybe they only tell you things that are really good, or they only tell you things that are really negative. They don't appear to give you kind of both sides, pros and cons, the good and the bad of the issue. What kind of language does the author use? What words they use to describe it? Do they use like really positive words, or do they use really kind of negative words? And watch out for denotation versus connotation. So denotation refers to a word's dictionary meaning. If you look it up in the dictionary, what does it say that that word means? There's also something called connotation, which is kind of like the emotions around a word. It's not in the meaning, but kind of like how the word makes you feel. A really good example of this would be the words cheap versus inexpensive. If you look them up in the dictionary, they both mean exactly the same thing. But for whatever reason, cheap has a more like negative emotion to it. Like it's not as good quality or something, I don't know. But inexpensive has like a more positive feel to it. Like it's not as much money, but the quality is okay. And those are kind of like the emotions around the words. They're not in the definition, but for some reason, cheap has a more negative emotion to it. The same is true of the words childlike versus childish. If you look them up, again, the same dictionary meaning, but the word childish has like more negative emotions attached to it. So watch out for that. So here's an example. Let's read this paragraph together. Reading for pleasure is a waste of time. People who spend hour upon hour reading don't get to live in the real world. They don't really learn anything that is useful about how to deal with everyday people and problems. Plus, teachers always make us read things that are boring. So I'm looking at this and thinking to myself, is this biased? And what do I see? I see a lot of opinion. I don't see a lot of facts. So that's one kind of warning sign there. Everything this person says sounds kind of negative about reading for pleasure. They use it's a waste of time. They don't go out in the real world. They don't learn anything useful. It's boring. Right, these are all kind of negative things. There's something in here about what is good about reading for pleasure. It's all kind of one-sided. The words they use, waste of time, boring, those are negative words. So yes, I think that there is bias in this paragraph. Let's do another example. Okay, let's read this one together. Citizens of the Fairlawn Park area look with alarm at the diabolical plot to change a beautiful spot into a baseball park. If this malicious plan is carried out, the lovely trees in the park will be chopped down. Values of the property within the area will drop sharply as the park fills with the filth and debris of the bulldozers and other equipment. Later, the shrieks of the young ruffians who take over the park will destroy the peace and quiet of the neighborhood. Obviously, no one cares about the poor citizen who has slaved to pay for his home and to keep up with his taxes. Okay, so I read this paragraph, and again, it sounds like it's mainly opinion. So in this situation, it looks like they're going to take out maybe the entire park or like a part of the park and kind of replace it with a baseball field is what it kind of sounds like. And I feel like most things that I read in here were all kind of negative. Chopping the trees down, your property values are going to drop. They're going to leave filth from the bulldozers and other equipment. They're going to have like these young kids running around destroying the peace and quiet. Right? It's all very negative. I don't see anything that's what's good about the ballpark. And there probably would be some good things, you know, like kids having somewhere to go and play. There's some good to hear. They don't really mention that. Negative words are all over this: diabolical, malicious, filth, the young ruffians, destroy. Right? There's a lot of really negative words in this and not much positive. So definitely I think this paragraph has a lot of bias in it. Okay, so just to recap, bias when an author has an opinion that prevents them from being fair to both sides.